In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how I calibrate vehicle images for modeling. It's the same steps you use to set up the images for the Hammer modeling series currently on my channel. Let's get started. Step 1. Get all the necessary softwares you'll need. The first software you're going to need is Autodesk Image Modeler. This is a very old and unrevised software, so you're going to have to do your best and find yourself a copy on the internet. The second software you'll need is Autodesk FBX Converter. It's a free software. There should be a link in the description to the download site. The third and final software you'll need is Blender, which you can get from the Blender site. Step 2. Get the images you need. In this case, we're going to be calibrating images of a vehicle. So we're going to go online and then try and find images of the specific car we want to calibrate. The first places you can look is the configurator sites of specific cars. For example, this Ford GT. This is a configurator created by Ford themselves, so you should have accurate images of the vehicle. This configurator should give you a sizable amount of images you need for this process. There are also 3D configurator websites like that of Ferrari, so you can take screenshots of the car and use it for the rest of the process. You can also look on Car Images website to try and find specific images of car. So the car that I'm going to be working with today is the 2023 Ferrari SUV. And as you can see here, we have a good amount of images we can use for this process. Now the advice that I'll give you in getting the images that you need for this process is, if you could get images that were taken in the same place at the same time, that will be good. Or if you can get renders that were made in the same place, that would be good. One thing I wouldn't recommend is mixing renders with real life photos, unless you absolutely have to and have no choice. As you can see here, I have one vehicle in one location. From here all the way to the other page, it was rendered in the same place. That is a very good one. So I'm going to save all the images that were made in that scene into a folder. A good amount of images is needed for the calibration process. The images that you're going to need for calibrating a car is one front view, one back view, one side view, and if possible, one top view, and then two front angled views and two back angled views. So that's what I have here in this folder. Now the next thing you want to do is to rename these images in order as though you are walking around the car. Okay, so if you're walking around the car from the front view, you're going to go from the front view, so that's going to be number 1, and you're going to go to the first front angled image, which in this case will be this, so this will be your number 2, and you're going to go to the second front angled image, which is going to be 3 here, and then to the side, which is going to be 4, and then to the slightly angled to the back, which is going to be 5. This is going to be 6. Here is going to be 7. Now the next thing you want to do is take all of these images you have in here, except for the front, the side, and the back. Nope, the side is not excluded, and flip them in the opposite direction to show the other side of the car. So in this case, if you have any software like Photoshop or GIMP or any type of software that can flip this horizontally for you, you can use that. But I used the Windows photo editor, which is quick and easy. Alright, so once I open that in Windows Photo, I'm just going to click here, and I'm just going to click on this icon down here to just flip it the other way. Save it as a new copy into your folder. I'm going to save this as number... Okay, this cannot be number 8 because remember we're going 360 around the car. So this has to be number 8, number 9, 10, 11, 12. So what I'm going to do is close this, do not save, and I'm going to open this first. And then I'm going to flip this one like this. I'm going to save it as a copy in our folder as number 8, save. And I'm going to open the next one, which is this, edit that, flip, save a copy, and that would be number 9. Now I'm going to take this, edit, flip, save a copy, and that would be number 10, save, close. Alright, so once done, this is what you should have, 12 images. I should open the first image and use the arrow key to scroll around. You can see it looks as though I'm taking a 360 around the car. And this is what we're going to be working with in the software Image Modeler to calibrate the images so we can use those images to model in Blender. One important step that I missed was to make sure that all of these images are in the same exact resolution. So if you take a look at this first image here, you can see it's 2560 by 1440, and this is also the same thing, 2560 1440. Basically all the images here are of the same resolution. So what I would recommend is make sure the first 7 images you have are of the same resolution before you start flipping them, so you don't double your work. Step 3. Calibrating Image Modeler. Now here in Image Modeler, what we're going to do first is to head over to the Edit and Preferences. Head over down here where it says Calibration. I'm going to disable the Use Progressive Calibration checkbox here. I'm going to set the low residual value to 3 and the high residual value to 6. And once you're done, just hit Apply and then hit OK. The next thing we're going to do is to loading the images we're going to need for this calibration. So I'm going to head over to File, then click on Load Images. I'm going to click on Add Images and then find wherever you saved your images and start loading them in. Now I wouldn't recommend selecting everything and then opening it, because what happens when you do that is the program will basically randomize the position of each image so they are not in order like we've numbered them here. So the best thing you can do, which is what I do, is to take the first 2 and then hit Open, and then you hit OK, and then a pop-up message comes up which asks you, do you want to load more images? Then you're going to click yes, and you're going to add in the next one, which is 3rd. You're going to hit OK. You're going to go again yes, add images, number 4. Then you're going to keep doing this until you've added in all of the images that you need for this process. Once you're done, you've added in all of your images you need, all you're going to do is then hit no. Now down here I'm just going to left click on any of these images here, and then left click, hold it down, and then drag it to the left to show us all of the images we have in here. So I'm going to center it to somewhere here. We have a total of 12 images that we're going to be working with. Now the next thing we're going to do is to start adding in what is called locators. The locator is what the program is going to use to calibrate the images for us. So when you're working on something like a vehicle, the first locator you want to add in should be on any object in the center of the vehicle. So if we take a look at the vehicle here, a center object could be the logo here, or the one down here, could be a centerpiece, or this piece down here. So just pick any of the objects you see here, or anything you see on the car that is visible in most of the images. So if we take a look at the logo here, you can see it's visible here, it's visible in this one, visible here, and if we go all the way to the back, it's also visible here, and also finally visible here. So that's a total of 5 images that it's visible in. That's good enough. The same with this one here. It's visible here, visible here, visible here, visible there, and then back there. But then if you take this one down here, you can see it's visible here, it's also visible here, but then when you get up here, it's not visible. But in this case, the one that I'll prefer to use is the logo. So that is what we're going to be placing the first locator on. So I'm going to click, left click on the screen, and then hold it down to show this zoomed in section of the image like this, and then move your crosshair to where you want to place the locator like so, and then release the left click, and it should add in a locator right there. And you can see here in the calibration folder, it's added in a new locator. And if you also take a look down here, you can see a gray cross indicating where the locator was added in. Now I'm going to move on to the second image, and I'm going to zoom into this area. Just use your scroll mouse to zoom in and out. And then also if you want to move around, it's just like in Blender, you just hold down your middle mouse click and then move it around. I'm going to zoom into this area. As you can see in here, it's the locator that is selected. So if we should left click, that's the locator that we're going to be adding in this area. So I'm going to left click and hold and move it to about the center of the logo here. I'm going to release to add in that locator, that same locator on the second image here. I'm going to move on to the third image, and I'm going to add in that same locator in the middle here of the logo like that. And I'm going to move here to add in on this image as well to the center of it like so. And then finally back here, I'm going to add it in as well to about there. If you take a look at the previewed images down here, you can see we have the same locator here, 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 and then here. So on 5 different images. That's the first locator we're going to add in. The second locator we're going to add in is going to be the opposite of this one. So we're going to head over to the back view of the car and find any centered objects here. So it could be this logo here, it could be this piece you have down here, the license plate. It should basically be something that could be visible in most of the images. Now I'm going to go with the logo here. So I'm going to add in a new locator, because if you go ahead and then left click right now, it's going to add in that same locator in this area. But we don't want to use the same locator. We want to use a new locator to define this one. Because if you go ahead and add in this same locator here, you're basically telling the program that whatever object you're looking for is in the front of the car and is also in the back of the car, which is not possible, which would then result in, calibration errors. Alright, so to add in a new locator, we're just going to move our mouse up here to where we see 2 crosshairs, one red one and then one black one. I'm going to left click on it to indicate we're adding in a new locator. Now nothing will show or indicate that you're adding in a new locator. You just have to left click on it at least once. Now once you've done that, you can just left click, hold it, and then move your mouse to where you want to place the locator, like that. And you can see it added in a new locator here on the right side. And I'm going to define that locator on other images like this one. So to the center, like so. I'm going to define it here as well. Make sure you're placing the locator in the exact area where you think the locator should be for the other images. So I'm placing it in the center of the horse we're seeing here, and that's where I'm placing it for all of the images we have in here. So you can see they're all in the center of the horse. The position is very crucial. Now in this one, you can see the horse is facing the opposite direction. The reason for that is, if you remember in the beginning we flipped the images. That shouldn't be a problem. Cars are identical on the left side and on the right side, so it's basically the same thing. Alright, now let's see here. Okay, it's also visible here, so I'm just going to left click and move it to about the center like that. And let's make sure that's all of the possible images we can add it to. Yeah, very nice. So now that we've added in those 2 center locators, we're going to start adding in the extra locators that we're going to use to calibrate this. Now the total amount of locators we're going to need for something like this, which is double-sided, where double-sided means we're basically moving on one side of the car to the opposite side. Now this would be the second side. That's what double-sided means. But if you're working on one side of the car, you could just calibrate just one side if you want. And for that, you could need just 30 locators. But for something like this, which is double, you're going to need between 60 to 100 or 120 locators, depending on how high you can go, but it should be, I would recommend at least 60 locators for this process. Alright, so we're going to start adding in locators from the front. If I should show you the side view, we're going to start adding in locators from the front all the way to the back. So we're going to start with the first image here. We're going to find a point on the vehicle where we can add in a locator, and then also add it in all of the other images. Basically find the exact same position without confusing ourselves and then adding it in. What I'm trying to talk about is, if you add in a locator, say I'm going to click to add in a new locator. If you add in a locator somewhere here and then you move on to the second image, you can't really tell where you place that locator. So that would be difficult to find, and that would result in calibration issues. So let me just delete this locator real quick. The best thing you can do instead is to add in that locator to about somewhere here. Now this should be an easy to spot area in most of the images. So I'm just going to left click and then release to add in that locator there. And I'm going to move to the second image, and you can see it's easy to find. So I'm just going to add it in again to about there. And I'm going to move on to the next image. Easy to find. I'm going to add it in about there. And that's basically the idea. So you're just going to add it in all of the images that show that specific area. If you take a look at this one, you can see it's not visible. So we cannot add it in this area. All you have to do is to just ignore that one and move on to an image that shows that area. And in this case, there is no image that shows that area. Now this one is for the opposite side, so you can't add it here. The locator is supposed to be on this side, which is not visible. so we can't add it into the rest of the images except for the initial 4. Alright, another good practice would be to add in a locator to the opposite of the locator you just added in. So we added in a locator 3 here. The next thing we're going to do is to add in a new locator on the opposite side, which is going to be here. So I'm just going to left click. Remember, I clicked here to add in a new locator. If you forget that, you're basically going to be telling the program that locator 3 is here, and you don't want that. So you basically want to add in a new locator before placing in that locator here. Alright, now I'm going to move on to the second image. It's not visible here. It's not visible here. It's not visible in any of these images, except here you can see it visible. So I'm just going to left click and drag to about there to place it. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Place it, do the same thing here, and then place it. And that's basically the idea. So you could just go ahead and add in all of the front locators you can add in, and then you basically keep adding in locators from the front, making your way to the back of the vehicle. And you don't necessarily have to start with the first image on the list. You could start somewhere here. So for example, you could move here, and then you could add in a new locator to about here. Maybe this is where you want to start. That's where you feel is convenient. So you just add in the locator to about somewhere here like this. And then you can go to the images on the left side and on the right side of that image, and then add in that same locator on them. So like that. And then up here like so. You can see it's also visible here, so I'm just going to add it in. Locator 5. If you're not sure what locator you're working with, the name shows next to the locator. So you can see here it says locator 5. Now here in the front view it's not visible, so we're not going to add it in. It's visible here, visible here, visible there. It's not visible here, so we can't add it in. It's not visible here either. Now remember, once you've added it in this side, you're going to do the same thing for the opposite side. So basically we're going to move to the opposite image, which is this, and then add in a new locator, and then left click and drag, and then use that to locate the point in all of the images we can see it in. Now that's just how easy it is. So all that you have to do is to keep adding in locators, locators, locators in places that you know you could basically find on the other images. Now let's say you've added in a good amount of locators, but then you realize, for example, let's say I add in a new locator here, right, to about somewhere here where this line ends. I wouldn't recommend using that though, because it's kind of hard to see. But let's say we add in a locator here, and we move on to this image, and then for some reason we're confused. We mistakenly placed that locator somewhere here, which is wrong, right? But then we forgot about that, and then we added in a new locator, and then we continued our work, and then later we came back and then we realized that, oh shoot, this locator is in a different location. How do we fix this? So basically all you have to do, say you have added in a new locator, another locator, and you have multiple locators, so you've made your way off of 7 because you feel like you're done with it, right? How do you come back to number 7? All you can do is to just basically left click on it, and that would select it. Remember, it will not be selectable in any of the images you haven't placed that locator in. So here you can see we placed locator 7 in image number 1 and 2, but in image number 3 there is no locator 7, so you're not going to see it. So it's only going to be visible in these images, or the images you place the locator in. So let's say you want to come back to this locator. Basically you can left click here to select it, or you can basically left click on it here to select it. So maybe locator 2 or locator 3. So you can see basically clicking on them selects them. And the one you have selected, if you should move to another image and then left click, you're basically going to be adding that locator to that image. So if you don't want to make that mistake, always remember to click on the add new locator here. Always click on it to basically signify you're adding in a new locator before left clicking and then adding in your locator. So let's go ahead, let me just delete the example locators I added in. Now we're just going to go ahead and then add in all the locators we need, and I'm going to show you guys at the end of this, because this could take time, lots and lots of time, and I can't record all that process. So I'm just going to skip to the point where I added in all the locators and then explain to you guys what to do next. Alright, so here we are at the end. I have gone ahead and then done my best and added in about 60 locators here. You can tell by the number here. You can see it says 61. Now it's 60 locators, not 61, because I think it didn't add in a locator 33. So that's a total of 60 locators. Now you can see only a few are visible here because it doesn't look like 60 locators. Now the reason for that, if you remember, I mentioned the locators that are visible in here are the ones you placed. The ones that you didn't place in this image are not going to be visible. So if I switch the image, you can see the other ones that are placed in the other images are visible. If I should cycle through, you can see all the locators that I've added in. All the way to the other side. So now that you've added in all the locators, the next thing you want to do is to tell the program to use all the positions of the locators you've added in to calibrate the images you have in here. So to do that, all we have to do is move our mouse up here to where it says Calibrate, and then just left click on that. Now you're going to get this pop-up message, and you're just going to hit OK. And that should calibrate all of the images for you. Now when you have a green on all of your locators like this, that basically means that the calibration was successful. But if you had something like a yellow locator, basically this icon here is going to be yellow, and that means you're close to a good calibration. It's not a perfect, or it's not a close to perfect calibration, and that it needs a little more work. And in a case like that, you're just going to go through all of the locators here. For example, maybe locator 15 is yellow, right? So you're going to left click on locator 15, and you're going to move in each of the images and then try to place or replace the locator in that image. So if you should select locator 15, for example, you're going to see in here all of the cross. Let me switch this to calibration so we can see it, and then select locator 15. You can see the crosses here are also green, which means they are well calibrated. But if any of these crosses were to be yellow, that means the calibration has a bit of a problem there and needs some attention to. So if you basically want to get all greens in this area, you're going to use that to kind of calibrate everything to get it to be perfect or close to perfect. So you basically, for example, this is yellow, right? So you're just going to click on this one, and then you're just going to move your locator around just to try and then get that cross to be green to imply a good calibration. Now basically, if you want to move the same locator around, you can't left click somewhere else to move it. That's not going to work. If you left click somewhere else, it's not going to do anything. You have to left click on that locator and hold it down and move your mouse to move that locator around like this. And then move it around to try and get maybe a green or perfect calibration on all of the images that are showing yellow. Another color that could show up is red. If your locator is showing a red color, that means there's a huge problem with your calibration. So basically you have to go back to each of those images that locator was placed in, and then try to fix things in those images. Once you have green on all of your locators, it means you're good to go. Now once you're done with the calibration, you can see here we have a locator, and you see the locator is in the center of the vehicle. That is a good calibration. If you go to the back as well, and you see that the rear locator, which is this locator 2, if I should select it in here, you can also see that is also in the center of the car right here. That implies a good calibration, and you are good to go. So with the calibration done, the next thing we're going to do is to define the axes of this scene we have here. So we're going to head over into the calibrations tab here, and then here where it says define world space, we're going to left click on that to add in a axis icon here. We're going to use this to define the axes of this scene. So basically we want to tell the program that from here to down is the z-axis, and then from here to this side is the y-axis, and basically from here to about this side is the x-axis. Now to do this, let's get back here. We're going to take this, I'm going to left click and drag. Now basically this is going to be snapping to a locator. It's not going to be snapping to anything else besides the locator. So if you start moving this, which is the origin point, the yellow area you see here, or the blue area, you're just going to left click and then drag to any of the locator you want to start this with. So I'm going to move mine to about this locator right here, and you can see it instantly snaps to it like that. And then the next thing I want to do, I'm going to switch the image to this, and you can see we have it here, and I'm going to define from this locator to that one to be the y-axis. Now if you take a look here, you can see it's not a perfect Y, but that's not important. As long as it's in the direction of the y-axis, that should be good enough. So I'm just going to get to this image, and I'm going to drag the end of the y-axis here, so you can see this dot here. I'm just going to left click and then drag towards this locator here, and it should snap to it. And then that's good. And then next thing we're going to do is to define the z-axis or the x-axis, and I'm going to define the z-axis for this one. So I'm going to take the end of the z-axis here, and I'm going to drag it towards the locator down here until it snaps. I'm going to release it to keep it there. Now all that you have to do is to hit the apply to apply the axes we just set, and then we're ready to export the file. So we're just going to hit File, Export Scene As, and then we're going to change the format here from image modeler files to Autodesk FBX. Now we're just going to select the location where we want to save this. I'm going to save mine in the FBX folder here. I want to keep it the same name as this, so car. I'm just going to replace mine, and I'm just going to hit OK. Step 4. Converting the FBX file. Now the next thing we're going to do is to convert that Autodesk FBX file we just created or exported. Now that file cannot be imported directly into Blender. So what you have to do first is to convert it with the FBX converter I mentioned in the beginning before importing it into Blender. So here we are in the FBX converter. This is what it should look like when you open it up. And then what we're going to do is to click on Add. Now we're going to add in that FBX we exported by selecting it. Now we're going to choose a destination folder, so you're going to have to choose that yourself by clicking on the Change Destination Folder icon here or tab, and then select wherever you want to save it. When you're done, just hit Select. Now all that you have to do is to just hit Convert. Now if you didn't select any destination folder, it's going to automatically save it in the folder where the initial FBX file was saved. So just find wherever that is and then import it into Blender. Step 5. Importing into Blender. Alright, so now here we are in Blender, and then we're going to import the FBX file. So I'm just going to select all of the objects we have in here and press X to delete them. Now let's head over to File, Import. Now I'm going to say FBX, and I'm going to find wherever is saved that FBX file, the one we converted, and I'm just going to select car. Then this is what we should have. A bunch of origin points. If you zoom in closer, they look like empties. So first things first, I'm just going to rotate this in the x-axis. As you can see, it's rotated upwards. So I'm just going to press R and then X, and then type in 90 to rotate it like this. And then the next thing I'm going to do is to hit the period on our keyboard, and I'm going to select individual origins. Now I'm going to scale this up until I can see the objects like that. And as you can see right now, the cameras are facing the other direction. They are not pointing towards the empty we have in here. The next thing we're going to do is to change our orientation from global to local. And then we're also going to make sure we have our pivot points set to individual origins. And then we're going to deselect all of the empties we have in here until we have just the cameras here selected. To be sure, make sure it is 12 objects that are selected here. Now we're just going to press R, and I want to type in Y, and I want to type in -180 to flip the cameras in the opposite direction, like that. Now I'm just going to take the empties we have in here. They are too big, so I'm just going to scale them down to about something like this. Now if we press numpad 0 to get into camera view, you can see this is what we have. But right now we don't have any image in here. So what we want to do is to go over into our camera tab here. Now we're going to click on background image, and then let's expand this and click on add image. And we're going to load in the image that is supposed to be for this camera. In this case, it's going to be image number 1 right here. So just going to click on open. Now we're going to load in image number 1. Now let's just set the opacity to 1, and then we're going to set the frame method to crop. And that's it. We're basically going to do the same thing for the rest of the cameras we have in our scene. So I'm going to go over to camera number 2. Let's just say add image, open, add in the second image, which should be number 2, same name as the camera name. I'm going to set the opacity to full, and then set the frame method to crop. Now the next thing we're going to do is to add in markers on the timeline down here. So we have a total of 12 images. So let's set the end frame to 12. And then let's zoom into this area here. I'm just going to press M to add in a marker on the first frame. Now I'm going to move on to 2, add in a marker all the way to the end. Let's get back to frame number 1. Now what I'm going to do is to take the first camera, and I'm going to move our mouse down here in the timeline, and I'm just going to hit Ctrl B to bound that camera to the marker we have down here. Now I'm going to take 2, and make sure your timeline cursor is on frame number 2, and then hit Ctrl B. Now take 3, make sure your frame counter is on 3, and then press Ctrl B, go to 4, frame number 4, Ctrl B, all the way to the end. Now let's hit numpad 0 and get into camera view, and let's jump to the first frame. Okay, I think I'm going to scale down these empties a bit more, so I'm going to take the whole thing. Now I'm going to set our pivot point to individual origins, and then set our orientation to global, and then let's scale this down a bit more to about this size. Now let me get back into the camera view so we make sure everything is good. So I'm just going to cycle through the images. And as you can see, the import worked perfectly. Now, one more thing we have to do before we call this done is to align everything with the world we have in here. So I'm going to take everything in our viewport, and I'm going to make this the active element. The vertex that is supposed to be the center locator for our image is going to be our active element. Always use the center one to define what we're about to do. So I'm just going to get to the top view, and I'm going to press G and then move the entire thing to about here, making sure that that empty is our active element. I'm just going to make sure it lines on the axes, the X and Y axes, as equally as possible, like that. I want to get back to the top view, making sure this is the active element. I'm going to switch the pivot point to active element, and then let's move on to the back. So basically, if we rotate this, it's going to rotate on that active empty there. Now let's get to the back here. This is supposed to be the center empty for the back of the car. So we're just going to press R and then Z to rotate this to the center here, like so. Do not worry about the Y-axis, just make sure the origin is directly on the Y. So I'm just going to R and then Z and then move this to about there, just so the origin is sitting directly on the Y-axis. Alright, very nice. Now that's not all. We're just going to get to the side view now, and then let's rotate this in the X-axis. Actually, to do this, let's get into camera view, and let's switch to a better image. So an image like this one, basically. Now I'm just going to press G and then move this. Notice how the world axis moved there. So I'm just going to move it to about somewhere here, like so. Just press G to move it. I'm going to press R and X and rotate this. Remember, with the empty active object we have in there, we're going to rotate in the X-axis until we have the Y-axis sitting directly underneath the tires we have here. So you can see it's running from here all the way to there. I'm just going to zoom in just to be sure. I'm just going to press G and Z and move this here. And then let's zoom in here, press R and X and rotate it out. And then that is good. Now let's get onto the side view. All right, so get out of camera view and get to the side view. Now let's see here. Again, make sure this is the active element, right? And then you can see this empty here and this empty here are identical empties. So basically what we're going to do is to make sure they are overlapping with each other here on the side view. So I'm just going to press R and then Y until they are overlapping, like so. So I'm just going to zoom in just to make sure. So R and then Y. So make sure they are overlapping like that. So something like so is good enough. All right, now let's hit 0 to get into camera view and see what this looks like. Okay, very nice. Now I'm just going to take the whole thing and press G and Z because the Y-axis is supposed to be in the middle of the car. So I'm just going to press G and Z to move it down until it is sitting about in the middle of the car like that. Let's take a look at the front. Okay, very nice. Here. Okay, looking good. I'm just going to move it down a bit more like that. Okay, looking good. All right, very nice. So basically that is how you calibrate images of a vehicle and import it into Blender to start modeling a vehicle. Now here is a quick test I did with the calibration we just made. So if I go into camera view, I just model this door here just to quickly see how things are looking with this calibration. And if I switch through the images, you can see it is looking really good, very close to accurate as you can get it. I also added in a front edge here and a back one just to see how things look, so you can take a look at that and see how nice the calibration worked out. Okay, looking good. So basically that's the steps to calibrating an image and importing it into Blender for modeling. I hope this video helps you out, and I'll see you guys in the next video.